A couple of weeks ago, my friend June and the other half of this channel was telling me about his idea to make an Obeka Splitter of Seconds deck, where the main goal was to introduce the Monarch mechanic into the game with the various court cards, and then get tons of value from the additional upkeep triggers that Obeka provides when it does combat damage. To which I responded, nah dude, if you want to build a Monarch deck, you should play a commander that can guarantee putting the Monarch mechanic into play, as there's only so many court cards, and of the 25 or something cards in Grixis colors that put the Monarch into play, most of them are really bad. I also have a certain prejudice for decks that are like 3 to 4 colors, so I suggested he should instead make his commander Denethor the Stone Seer, to which he responded, ew, no, what the heck, that card is super lame and weak, what? I couldn't be more offended. Denethor has so much to offer, and I knew he could pilot a super cool Monarch deck. I swear, he has potential. So fueled by mostly spite and an awesome deck building challenge ahead of me, I decided I'm going to build an awesome, super cool Denethor the Stone Seer deck. And on top of that, I'm also going to make it under $100 so that I'm not just playing random blue-red good stuff cards, and it's generally going to be a cool synergy deck. Okay, so let's take a look at this guy. Enter the battlefield Scry 2. This is a lot better than it seems, as it's going to smoothen out a lot of our opening draws, and it's going to make more opening hands more keepable, like especially cans that just have 2 lands. All of a sudden we can scry and make sure we hit more lands. In Commander, you can sort of think about your Commander as the 8th card in your opening hand. So by playing cheaper Commanders that you can more consistently cast on earlier turns, it gives you a lot more value out of your opening hands, whereas if your Commander is like 5, 6, 7, or 8 mana, then it's sort of like a dead card in the 8th slot that is your hand. So if you're able to swap out a really expensive commander for a cheaper commander that's going to have the same basic plan, I think they're going to have more consistent openings to your games, and sometimes those openings are really important at commander. I also like building decks that have the philosophy that the commander helps the deck's game plan and isn't the entire game plan. This way you don't feel bad if it gets removed and are forced to keep tapping out every turn to recast it, as it's really integral to the overall deck. Okay, so also, for 4 mana and a tap and sacrificing him, we can deal 3 damage to any target and set target player to become the Monarch. Generally, we're always going to be choosing ourself, but it's kind of cute that you can give it to somebody else and do some politics. So the first theme for the deck is going to be the Monarch. Okay, so naturally we want to make this a Monarch-based deck, so we need to play cards that are going to benefit from the Monarch and work well with the Monarch mechanic. So I've only actually picked 4 Monarch cards, because like I said, a lot of these Monarch cards are pretty weak, but I've also put 2 initiative cards in there, because decks that are going to be good at keeping and taking advantage of the Monarch are also going to be good at keeping and taking advantage of the initiative, which is another really fun mechanic that we're going to be able to play with. So besides helping smooth out our hands and introducing the Monarch mechanic, that's really all Denethor is going to be in this deck, but he serves his purpose, we're happy with it. Now we got to think about how else we're going to take advantage of his interesting card. Well, the next thing I noticed is that his ability can be activated at instant speed, so I thought, let's have a bunch of 4 mana instants that will be good at helping to threaten the activation, so you can hold up the Denethor activation, but for some reason if you don't think it's the right time to activate it, you can play a 4 mana instant instead. So I've included a huge suite of flexible 4 mana instants as well as some 4 mana cards with flash. We're going to get more to that later, but for now just imagine that a quarter of our deck is 4 mana instants as well as some flash cards. Anyway, so this reminded me that in the most recent set, the Final Fantasy set, we got this huge support for casting non-creature spells with mana value 4 or greater, so naturally these cards are going to be a perfect include in our deck. Shantoto, the Emperor of Palencia, Tella the Great Sage are all going to enjoy triggering in this deck. Generally speaking, most Izzet spellslinging lists promote casting a lot of cheap spells, so getting some new cards that promote casting bigger spells is a neat challenge for the deck, and a nice area that the Izzet archetype is heading towards. Okiva and Shark Typhoon, for example, are great cards that benefit from casting non-creature spells that have high mana value, as it's going to generate us bigger sharks as well as tons of little goblins. And Jin Cataxius is going to draw us a card every time we play one of our 4 drops, and it has a neat finisher slapped on the back as well that might come up. Sphinx of the Forgotten Lore is great because with Flash, if we're not casting one of those 4 mana spells or using the Denethor activation, we can flash this guy in, and then every time it attacks, so we get to give an instant or sorcery in our graveyard flashback so we can rebuy all of our spells. Take a look at this card, Diviner of Mist. Whenever this creature attacks, you get to mill 4 cards, then you may cast any instant or sorcery card from your graveyard with mana value 4 or less without paying its mana cost, then exile it. This is such a perfect include, as because all of our spells are for the most part instant sorcery mana value 4, we're more often than not going to be getting the maximum value out of this card, and it's a cool little dragon with flying, which might become relevant later. Speaking of getting max value out of cards, we're likely able to get max value from Baral's Expertise too, which is a solid interaction card, bouncing 3 permanents, and then we get to cast a 4-drop for free, and like I said, about a quarter of our deck are these 4-drops. Same goes for Expansion Explosion, which has a 2-mana copy version on the one side, which it only lets us copy spells mana by 4 or less, but that's fine because all of our spells more or less are. And then we're not using that side, it has a cool mana sink on the other side, which we can use late game to hit something and restock our hand. So, that is a nice mana sink, but we got other mana sinks. So, talking about mana sinks, we won't always have a 4-mana instant to cast when we're holding up our Denethor interaction. That's why we also have a lot of cool cards that have a sink for us to use 4-ish mana, so that we can do something on our turns even if we don't have the right card in hand. Commander games can go kinda long, so having a sink that you can use your extra mana for is going to help you win games that are going a bit longer than they should. It's also going to help you be mana efficient, which is important for winning also. Okay, so we're a Monarch deck, and what does the Monarch do? Well, it draws us a card on our end step, which is the second card we're drawing in a turn. And blue is packed with lots of cool payoff cards over the years that give us extra value from drawing our second card in a turn. Drawing second card payoff. So, starting with the big heaters, Ironcrag Pyromancer lightning bolts any target whenever we draw our second card, so when we do our Monarch trigger, that's going to trigger. Homunculus Horde, it's kind of like Scoot Swarm, where it exponentially copies itself every time we draw our second card, so we can just flood the board with 2/2s every time we're drawing. Mischievous Mystic, Improbable Alliance, Ethereal Investigator, and Elandra Skydreamer are all going to generate as cool flying tokens whenever we draw our second card in a turn. And because so many of our instant and sorcery spells from earlier that we briefly mentioned actually draw us 2 cards, we can trigger these draw 2 creatures on our opponent's turn as well to fill the board up with little flying tokens. And what are these flying tokens great at? Well, taking back the Monarch if we ever lose it, of course. This engine is a self-feeding loop. Having the Monarch on our end step draws us that card, which is going to trigger these creatures to generate us a flying token. And then if we lose Monarch, we have the flying token to take back the Monarch. Okay, so we're flooding the board with flying tokens, and most of our non-token creatures have flying too. So we gotta have some flying synergy. What's super sick is that most flying tribal decks don't have access to red, but we do. So we get to play cards like Earthquake, which essentially functions as a one-sided board wipe. Red has a lot of Earthquake-style cards, as red is a color that's supposed to be good at killing lots of little creatures, but struggle at killing big creatures and flyers. But in our deck, this magic color pie design nerf for red is actually going to become our strength, as it's going to generally function as one-sided board wipes. Ryusi the Falling Star is one of my favorite old cards, and I'm so glad it has a nice fit in this deck. Wiping the non-flyers when it dies, and being a decently sized flyer as well, works perfectly in the deck. It can attack, it can keep Monarch, it can block, and then what's really cool is that it can aggressively attack into any creature with reach. If you have it blocked by a Titan of Industry or something, it's gonna die, but it'll still have 5 damage marked, and then its death effect will hit it for another 5 damage. So don't be afraid attacking this guy into a creature with a reach if it has 10 or less toughness. Okay, take a look at this really evil card I found. Mudslide. The text is a little weird, but essentially what it means is creatures without flying don't untap during their controller's untap step unless they pay 2 for each of those creatures. What's great is a majority of the non-flying creatures in our deck have no interest in attacking anyways, so this doesn't really affect us much at all. Continuing with our anti-flying hate, Stormtide Leviathan is a huge 8/8 that says creatures without flying or island walk can't attack. So your opponents won't be able to do anything unless they have flyers, and this guy, he gives himself the exemption because he has island walk. So similarly to Mudslide, we're going to be turning off a lot of the value of our opposing creatures and helping slow the game down against big mean creatures that we can't realistically deal with that well. And our little flyers are going to keep chipping away and winning the game slowly over time. But if we want to ramp that up, Gravitational Shift is going to pump all of our flyers on board and is going to nerf all the non-flyers. So all of our little 1/1 flyer tokens are going to start hitting hard, and our opponent's creature's pressure is going to slow down, making them overall less effective. Even at hitting our opponents, they're not going to really have any much power. Basically, everyone's going to feel really bad. Except us, of course. And continuing on the theme of pumping up our little tokens, Shadow Puppeteers gives us a couple flying tokens when it enters, and it upgrades all of our flying tokens to 4/4 dragons whenever we attack. Curiosity Crafter is also going to draw us a card whenever one of our tokens connects on an opponent, and give us no maximum hand size. Okay, so cycling back here, we talked about 4 mana instants, we have a lot of them. So let's take a look at what we're dealing with. Well, I want to play a lot of spells that also draw 2 cards, as they can trigger our draw 2 effects on an opponent's turn. So we got Chemister's Insight, Big Score, Unexpected Windfall, Coil and Catch. We also have some cool modal counter spells like Spellgyre and Soul Read that when they're not busy countering a spell, they can be used to draw 2 cards. Mystic Confluence for an extra mana can do both as well. We can counter something unless they pay 3, draw 2 cards, or some other variation of its effects. Talking about interaction, this deck is running no shortage of it, with plenty of ways to bounce permanents, counter spells, and bounce spells, which can get around cool spells that say they can't be countered because bouncing a spell is not countering it. Focusing on some of the more unique ones, Press the Enemy is a versatile counter/bounce that lets you play an instant or sorcery spell for free with equal or less mana value than the spell that you are bouncing or countering. Really, really cool. C Double can create a copy of a spell, and this works on creatures and permanents as well. The copy will just become a token, so that's really cool. If someone's playing an amazing spell, you can copy it. If you have a really amazing spell yourself, you can copy it. Or it can create a copy of a creature in play, or sometimes both. Aetherize is going to help protect us from a big swing, and Occult Epiphany can trigger our draw 2 effects while providing us with lots of little flyers to help support our overall flying and Monarch theme. I really like change of plans here. So let's just say we make X equal 2. Then its mana value paid is 4, which is going to be good for our cards that care about us paying 4 into a non-creature spell. Then each of those creatures connive, and to connive, we draw a card, then discard a card, and if it was a non-land card, we put a counter on it. But what's important here is we're drawing 2 cards. So now we're also triggering our draw 2 effects, which we can do on an opponent's turn, and then we also have the ability to make those creatures phase out, which is really cool because we can use this as a protection spell, and because a lot of our creatures are tokens, phasing out actually protects the tokens without killing them. Unlike flicker effects that would make the token cease to exist. Okay, so quickly about the lands, what's really cool is there's a couple cycling lands in here, and let's just say that we have some creatures in play that care about us drawing a second card in a turn, but we don't have the Monarch, or we don't have a second way to draw it. If we cycle a land, that also triggers our draw a second card for turn, because cycling reads, discard this card, draw a card. The mana base is leaning primarily blue, as it is primarily a blue deck. This is something I generally try to keep the philosophy for my 2-color decks, is to try and lean the deck overall more so towards one color, so that the mana is more affordable and more consistent on those early turns. There's also a few lands that have unique mana sinks or abilities. Throne of the High City is cute because it can grab us the Monarch, for example. I also put Maelstrom of the Spirit Dragon in here, which is a land that can go get us a dragon. The deck is running 5 dragons that have various use cases, which I think 5 is enough to warrant playing this one of land, as the deck is only a 2-color deck, and the mana fixing is good enough, I feel like, that we can afford to play a couple random colorless lands. The deck isn't running Reliquary Tower, but I definitely think it could. It's just a little bit too pricey for our price cap, but if you have a copy, definitely throw it in there. And that's pretty much it. That's Denethor. So we got a lot of cool interlacing themes in Denethor the Stone Seer. So we have Monarch/Initiative, drawing a second card, 4 mana/4 mana plus non-creature spell triggering, Flying Tribal, and they all work together as this cool synergy deck. Our flyers are going to help us take back Monarch/Initiative, and then when we have Monarch Initiative, it's going to draw us a second card, which is going to generate more flyers, and then on our turn, we're going to be keeping our mana open to be playing at instant speed, so we can play our 4 mana non-creature spells, which sometimes are going to draw us cards, and sometimes are going to generate us flyers because they're drawing cards, and then we have our one-sided board wipes and flyer synergies, so we can have lots of one-sided effects that keep our flyers in play, but nobody else gets to keep their permanents in play. So overall, pretty cool. It's probably a it's probably like a bracket 1, 2, or 3 deck, to be honest. I do think it is a really cool synergy deck. I think it's really fun to play and fun to play against. The Monarch is just such an excellent mechanic, and having a deck that's going to introduce the Monarch every single time, I think, is going to make it really fun to play against, which I think is an important thing to think about when deck building if you're playing primarily with your friends. So yeah, pretty proud of it. The Spite fueled this deck. I'm excited to put it together in paper and absolutely destroy June's Obeka deck and be the true Monarch, the true king. Even though Denethor sacrificing himself, he will be our true king, leading our army of flyers into greatness. Hey, if you got to the end, please do consider subscribing, checking out some of our other videos. We got a Discord, you can join that, pretty cool vibes in there, and we'll catch you in the next one.